So I was just gonna mention something that Leg said it would be fine to mention. Next Thursday, I just wanted to invite all of you along. Can you see my screen? Jill, can you see that screen?
It's coming. It just says it started. We've just got Sharon has started screen sharing. That's it. You're up now.
Guys, on this, we've got a Zoom session on Thursday, which is talking about climate action in the Highlands. So hopefully there'll be some interest for people that are here as well. But there's there's some really interesting speakers. There's Tom, who's the chair of the Stop Climate Chaos, a really fascinating talk about start again, Sharon. We've got some really interesting speakers. Anyway, you can see the different places that they come from. I think Rebecca's coming from Leg, and Joan from the Development Trust that myself and Jill work for there. We'll be hosting it just to invite everyone. I've put my email address on my name here on Zoom, but you can also see it on that poster. But if you wanted to sign up and get sent the Zoom details, just send me a little message there. But it's a lovely one in the evening, and I actually went to a similar one that Asset were doing a few weeks ago, and it was absolutely fascinating. So I'd love to see as many of you there as possible, because I think it's really important action. But like I said, my name is there, Sharon at thursocdt.com. I'll pop it in the chat shortly as well. And that was it. This is our third session out of 4, so we're getting through them. I'd really love to see you all again, and I'll just pass over to Jill then.
Okay, thanks, Sharon. So welcome back to part 3 of our little course. Those of you that haven't been with us before, as always, if we've got some new people joining us, myself and Sharon both work for Thurso Grows, which is a Climate Challenge funded project. We work up in the community garden at Thurso, and really our objectives for this course were to help people get into growing. There's been a huge amount of people interested, of course, I think by lockdown, but we think absolutely brilliant that folk have gotten into this. So our objectives up there really are just sort of seasonal food sourcing, zero waste, 0 food miles, that type of thing. A very similar vein to what you guys have got at Lairg Learning as well. So that's really our motivation behind it, is just to help people. We're very, very happy to help people get into this and learn more and enjoy their growing and get something out of it. So that's where we're coming from. The session that we're looking at this week, we promised you a little bit about looking at the design elements and some of your points and considerations for site and design choices to make. So Sharon's going to take you through the PowerPoint today on that, with some interesting bits and pieces in on that as well. And then, as always, just very quickly, a wee bit time for questions at the end. Sharon, can I just check, sorry, we're not doing Mentimeter this week?
Oh. No, we are, Jill.
We are. Yeah, sorry, we normally discuss beforehand and I forgot to ask you, so I do apologise. So yeah, there is a wee Mentimeter coming right up as well. So Sharon's going to get that going for us now. Okay.
So we've done this before, so hopefully people will find. I've just popped it into the chat. Either go on to www.menti.com and pop in that 6-digit code that I've popped there, or you can just press the link if you're on a computer and it'll open it up. And I'll stress, like as I have each week, don't stress if your technology starts to sort of flit out, and you do not worry. We can do it in the chat as well. This is just a kind of should be a couple of questions coming up. There we go. We'll start with that one then. That's what's happening. This is just to give us a bit of an idea as we're doing our design session at the moment. Garden design and choices. So if you've got no idea, you're right at the beginning of your growing journey, you just put a little tick and it'll give me an idea. Maybe you've been in your first or second year of growing. You've just started out. You've got ideas, but you haven't started doing it yet. Maybe you did a little bit of growing last year.
Sorry, where do I tick? I don't know where to tick.
So there should be some different options, different
Yeah, I'm
questions.
seeing them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so just... Jill, can you go on? You should be able to choose one of those.
Seeing, yeah, I'm wanting to go to the start for the first one. Yeah.
Perfect.
I have no idea. Yeah, yeah. So where do I click?
So click on that one. Can anyone see? Sorry, I can't see the same.
On the writing, yeah?
I can't see the same screen as you, Elizabeth.
All right, okay, I'm being really stupid. But,
No, not at all. Anyone can see the screen, can help Elizabeth?
I've clicked on it, but nothing's happening.
Are you the first one, Elizabeth? Are you the I have no idea?
Yeah.
That's right, I just had a little dot in my mind.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Perfect, thank you.
That works too. It's just an indicator anyway. It's just helping me to get an idea. Great. So just thank you. I know there's only sort of 15 or 14 people that have added, but it just gives me an idea of what's going on. Jill, has this gone back a step? Can you see another set of questions on what you're seeing there?
We've got how big is your garden and growing area?
Super. So just another set of questions. Again, it's just an indicator. Please don't worry. You can also pop these answers in the chat if you want to, if you haven't made it onto Menti. Are you seeing the screen that I'm sharing there, Jill?
I can see it. I haven't clicked on the link myself because I'm terrified I'm going to lose connection if I do too much.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure if the actual question's gone back for people. That's okay. Oh, no, there you go. Some people are in.
It's coming through. That's it. Well done. Well done, folks.
So how do we get in? I'm sorry, do we have to click on the dots or something?
Can you...
I'm on the same. I can just see the screen that Sharon's sharing now. How big is your garden growing area?
Who is it that's talking? I can't quite see.
It's Morris from Dornoch.
Oh, well, how big is your garden area? Because I can just add it on in my head if that's okay.
It's just small.
Fairly small.
Small.
Yes. So 1 to 5 square meters.
Perfect. That's great. That will help me.
Perfect.
It's just what they do is they give me indicators. If everyone here was running a 3-acre croft, I'd probably give you some slightly different advice. But it looks like the majority of people are sort of, you know, in that 5 to 20 meter thing, with a few above, a few below. But that's okay.
Could you stick me on as well? I can't do anything either. It won't. I'm clicking.
Yeah, that's fine. How big is your garden?
I'm not sure. Between 20 and 50, and larger than 50, somewhere around about there.
Okay, great.
In the middle somewhere. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry to be a nuisance, but yeah, I've got a croft, and
that's all right.
So looking to design that, but you know, just go with, you know, the majority of things. I know that that's probably a little more odd.
No, that's fine. I mean, and we'll be talking about stuff that is useful to you there as well. So I'm going to stop it in just a second, guys. There's absolutely no stress. It just gives us a few like ideas and indicators. So stop the share. Great. Thank you for that. So what we're going to do in this session, we're just going to go into sort of a little PowerPoint. Hopefully there'll be some information there. As usual, I think, Jill, if we can ask you just to monitor the chat and do a little bit of collecting. So guys, if questions come up while we're talking, Jill will just keep an eye on the chat and we'll try and get to the questions at the end. So I've got questions in there. Jill, feel free to jump on as well.
Only to say I can't type as fast as Sharon, okay? So
it's all right.
I'm several steps behind you on the technology front.
Right, so I think I'm going to start sharing my screen. Is that a nod, Jill?
Yep, you're good.
Do you see what I see?
Yes, I do.
Well, I think that what you do at this stage, and it's great actually to see that there's quite a lot of you at this stage, still quite early stages in your gardening journey, is really important, because the decisions that you make now will affect an awful lot of the work that you do later as your gardens grow. So I can't place enough emphasis on design. I watched a video the other day And it was a chappie, he was saying basically what you're doing is you're front loading your work. You're going to sit down with your cup of tea and do your observing and do your thinking before you do your implementing. And that is very important and valuable work, because this design session will allow you to put things in place that mean that will save you time in the future. So my advice, if you're starting out, is spend a bit of time thinking and observing. It's really simple stuff, a lot of it, but if you get it wrong, you'll be back footing all the way along. And I would advise to design for a really regenerative design, a design of abundance, somewhere where you can have loads and loads of excess and make loads and loads of great connections. And I'm not going to spend more than just a minute or two on this slide, but when I was very early on in my gardening journey, I came across a movement called permaculture. It started out in Australia. There's a brilliant permaculture association here in the UK, and there's loads of courses and online things you can do. And it's really about a regenerative design, and it's based on some ethics. The ethics are the three sort of circles that you can see in the corner. And then from those ethics come some principles. And what it does, at the very least, for me, it revolutionized my life, having done a course. But at the very least, what it will do is give you a set of principles and tools to work to as you're designing your garden. And it uses a lot of formats that you can delve into. So if you want a bit more information to go a bit more into the design of your garden, I would signpost you towards permaculture. What I'm just going to spend 5 minutes on, I know this is a fairly busy slide, is talking through a Sadamet design process, which is a design process that I came across through permaculture. Spend a bit of time on this process if you're right at the beginning. You hear that drum roll? Survey. So survey your site, have a look at your site, that top sort of mind map where it says site, write down some of these things. Look at your water, your microclimates, get some maps. What are your sectors and your wind? How does the wind travel across your site? Where does the sun move? Where is your frost pockets? What's your climate? I think Jill said in the first session that we did that she was 700 meters above sea level, Jill. You know, these things make a big difference. You can start looking at maps and things and start to get ideas of what your site looks like, and just gather as much information as you can. Spend a bit of time also on your client. That's you guys. You're really, really important. You're really important because you'll have certain goals and things that you want to get out of your garden. So perhaps all you want to do is grow enough food for your family of 4 and make it really productive. Or perhaps like me, you want to also integrate areas where you can sit down in the summer and have a barbecue, you know, glass of wine, somewhere for your kids to play, a safe space for your dogs. So it's about a holistic design. So think about what your needs are and write them down. Do you just need to save money and make lots of vegetables, or do you need to have special access that you're getting a little bit older? Do you need to be mindful of how you move through the site? What are your constraints? I cannot stress it enough, and Jill will probably agree. You know, as you're starting out in your garden journey, think big, design big, imagine for all this stuff, but be mindful of how much time and energy it actually takes and you actually want to put into it in your first year. So perhaps you're only going to have 1 or 2 hours a week for gardening because you've got quite a busy lifestyle. So it'll be a case of building up over the years. And then once you've got all these questions answered and you've looked at all these different things, sit back and have a little think about it. You know, the functions comes into that one as well. And I would suggest at some point you get a map of what your garden is like now, like a base map, we would call that. And then you do another map, almost an overlay with your design on it. So you start to look at where you want to get to with your garden. So where you are now, with some of those things indicated on it, your boundaries, your borders, your windbreaks, perhaps where lots of water pools, things like that, and also where you want to get to in the future. At some point, this is going to be my big veg garden, this is going to be where the kids play, this is going to be where the chickens run. Think about where you place stuff on your design. If you put your chickens 5 minutes away at the end of your croft, because that's where you decide to put them today, if you spend the next 3 years walking 5 minutes every day to get to your chickens, to let them out in the morning and shut them up at night, you're wasting a huge amount of energy over those 3 years. But also, you probably don't want your chickens right outside your front door where you're going to trip over them. You probably want them in an area sort of somewhere in between the two, maybe where you can see them from the house, so if there's any foxes or predators about, so not too far away. So just think about where you place things. Think about your pots and herbs and things like that. I had a great pal that was putting a polytunnel in up here about a year or two ago. And I went round for a cup of tea and she showed me where she was going to put a polytunnel. It was right down like in this dip sort of away from the house, and it was only about 30 seconds from her house. And she's a really good pal, and she didn't ask me for advice, but after having a cup of tea and hearing about her plans, I did sort of chirp up and I said, oh, listen, Jean, if it was me, just be mindful that in the summer you'll be in and out of that polytunnel 2 or 3 times a day. At least I am, because I pop in to get a salad, I go in to get my herbs, I've got to shut the doors, I've got to worry if the wind's knocked it over. I'm in and out of my polytunnel all the time. I was like, that 30 seconds doesn't seem like much, but it adds up. Anyway, in the end, she had to think about it, and she did move where her polytunnel was, and we didn't really speak about it again. But I was around there not that long ago, and she brought it up herself, and she said, oh, I'm so glad I didn't put my polytunnel down there now, because she's in and out of it all the time. So just think about your placement and your functions. That's my little buttons, and then do it. You know, get on and do it. When you do the implementation, I would suggest doing a bit of a timeline. If this is your first year growing, or last year was your first year, and perhaps you only grew, you know, a couple of boxes and pots and pans, a small amount, you know, you don't have to build it all in a day. Think about a timeline. Maybe this year you'll double your growing space, you'll grow 2 beds. You know, eventually you're going to have 10 beds, but this year just maybe grow 2. Do it slowly. One of the principles of permaculture is make mistakes often. So do small things and adjust. Were you going to say something, Jill?
Yeah, I just want to back up what you said there about taking your time over it and try not to do it all in one day either, because that's what I tried to do and just about half killed myself. So I don't recommend that at all. But I have an image in my head of what I want my garden to look like. It doesn't quite look like that yet, but you work towards it. You work towards it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Spend some time. So do a timeline, think about how you're going to do it, then do it, you know, get some help in, and then think about what you've done. So this time next year, when you're sitting down and you're ordering your seeds and you're thinking about what you want to plant and grow, think, oh, you know what, last year, this is one from me, last year, Jill, I grew about 400 beetroot. I don't know why, I got carried away. I know that in my seed packet there's 400 beetroot. And I do know for a fact that in July, I couldn't give beetroot away. It was like everyone that got anywhere near me got given beetroot. And I still have beetroot. So my evaluation this year is grow less beetroot, Sharon. You know, so think about what you've done last year. I think someone on this chat, the other chat said, oh, my onions isn't fine. Okay, so evaluate what's going on, because growing your food isn't just about the plants. It's also about the harvesting, the storing, the processing, the picking. So evaluate what went well and what you need to change for next year. And then change it if you need to, tweak. If you go into something like Google Image and just type in permaculture design map or something like that, you'll get lots of beautiful pictures up of the way people have designed their gardens, and you can just get a bit of inspiration. But if all that's too much information, because really you've just got a small back garden and you want to have a couple of tips, then my top tips, raised beds. I really prefer growing my vegetables in a raised bed. It defines the area that you're growing your food in. Don't tread on it. You don't want to walk all over your beds because that compacts the soil, and you want nice friable soil. I would recommend you make your bed somewhere between 90 and 120 centimetres wide. That's a really good depth, because what that means is you can stand on either side of the bed and sort of reach into the middle. So that will stop you stepping on and compacting your soil. Also, what's really good about raised beds is you can build your soil, so you can add materials to it as you go through the years to increase your soil and your nutrients. And paths, I would probably make maybe something like 60 centimetres wide, something like that. Be mindful of your paths, you'll be up and down them. Don't do what this picture's done and leave it bare soil, because you'll, well, unless you want to strim it and you get grass, so you're going to strim your paths, but you might want to mulch it. But consider how you're going to do your paths. Think about water. It's a really important element in your garden, particularly if you're gardening somewhere like a polytunnel greenhouse. also in your conservatories. But consider when you put plants out, I have a whole area of my garden I just cannot get water to. I know that, but I also know I never ever plant seeds in it. I never direct sow. I always put seedlings into it once they're established and healthy and hardy. But consider water even up here. Your replacement, we talked about that a bit with the polytunnel, but think about your herbs, think about your salads, simple things like that. If you're out cropping your salads or checking them for slugs, you know, think about where you want your garden to be. I would create it fairly close to your home if you can. One of the best decisions I ever made was put in a garden that I can see from my kitchen sink, because it's the tidiest bit of garden I've got because I look at it all the time. Compost. Yeah. I think one of the best things I can advise is to work on your soil, love your soil, do things to improve your soil. And one of the easiest things you can do is by making compost. Fun fact that someone from the Highland Council told me this 2 weeks ago. 9 kilograms of waste every week goes into your bin. That's food waste. 1/3 is food waste and 2/3 is edible waste. That means that, you know, you can have a huge amount going into compost, and you're also recycling all your things like newspaper, cardboard, things like that, leaves, and you're literally turning it into nutrients, which you literally then translate into food. We talked about it in our resources and recommendations, but yeah, keep records. I'm still learning this, but write down what worked, what didn't work, times that you harvested, things that you're noticing. Reduce, reuse, recycle. These beds are really swanky. Someone spent lots and lots of money on some really nice wood from the timber yard. I have never spent money on wood from a timber yard. My raised bed edges tend to get made of like things that I can find, or at the garden we've got a lot of scaffolding boards, things like that we've reused. Wood is fairly easy to come across, but you don't even have to have defined edges like that. You could just build mounds in your raised beds and work on your paths. Yeah, and then we've got 3 different pictures. I really like that one on the left, because that is an example to me of like someone who's just designed for total abundance in their garden. And they're surrounded by, you know, these lovely green lawns, but the amount of food that they'll be kicking out of that garden will be absolutely fantastic. That middle one is a nice example of a sort of small to medium sized veg plot in someone's garden. And I like the one on the right because, and we talked about it with the companion plants, but that's a lot of integrated plants, nice sort of, it's almost looking more foresty garden-y, you know, you're creating lots of size and structures and heights and depths in your garden and encouraging beneficial insects. And I can't say it as well, actually, I haven't said it, but design for wildlife as well, because I think we talked about it last week, but they're like a really important part of, I think, your system and also your resilience, because as a gardener who's hopefully going to be low use on any pesticides and things like that, you want to have a resilient system. So mimic nature, make lots of places for them to hide, and encourage the beneficial animals into your garden. I hope that was interesting.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, we've got a few questions for you here. Okay. We had a question from Margaret about what size did you suggest for a raised bed size?
So the width, the length can be as long as you want it, but the width, I would say between 90 to 120 centimetres. And I think I was saying, because what you don't want to be doing is sort of standing on your bed. So that, just basically, when you do your bed, make sure you can reach the middle. Make sure you can stand on the edge and reach the middle. And that is what I would recommend.
Yeah. We've had another question as well about depth. Sorry. Wait, sorry, Karen asked what depth of a raised bed is best, and do you need to dig the earth below the level of the beds?
So when I start my raised beds off, depending on what I'm doing, I think one of the most successful ones are, depends a little bit on what soil you've got underneath, but if you're turning sort of soil, so you would do differently if you're building on gravel or something. But if you're turning soil, I would start with a good mulch of cardboard. So get a load of cardboard, which is a free resource, take all the sticky tape out, and put that just straight on the grass. And over time, what that will do is that will kill the grass. I would then say I'm probably going for about 60 centimeters minimum, but more if you can make more. You can always keep, it doesn't have to be full of soil. You can build your soil will build over the years, but you want to start at sort of your plant root balls of your bigger plants, like your big brassicas and stuff. They're like this, they're fairly big and hefty. So they'll go down beneath that cardboard. That cardboard will rot over the season. They'll be getting the nutrients from the ground, but you want a good depth of that sort of size at least. That sort of size. Hang on, I've got a ruler. What happens when you're at your parents' house? They're way more organised than you. What's that? 20 centimetres, there you go. 20 centimetres according to my mum and dad's ruler. That's what I would probably aim at. 20 centimetres, 15 centimetres, 15, 20 plus. It depends what you're building your edges from. What do you think, Jill?
Yeah, I think as well, if you remember what we did with our raised beds in the polycrub in the gardens at Thurso, we deliberately built them deeper. First of all, because we knew the soil would sink a little bit, and secondly, because we wanted to have the ability to build in nutrients and things over the years, didn't we? So we've thought about adding more material in so we can, we put seaweed in them this year, didn't we? We added seaweed to the beds this year, so you can mulch them and then add more soil and compost, your garden compost and things into them. So we deliberately built ours quite deep, and we started lower, and then we can then build on top of that. And that it gives us just a little bit more flexibility on the depth of the beds as well. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, and the soil that we got from for filling in the raised bed squash, I mean, we've got that from every place you can imagine. Like if I saw a farmer tailing his field over, I'd pop in there. We've had about 80 tonne of soil delivered to the community garden. There was a Premier Inn getting built that delivered us a load of soil recently. We had put posts up on our Facebook page on the free, the sharing, case let's buy and sell groups, things like that. Is anyone turning their garden over? Because soil is a waste product for a lot of people if they're getting groundworks done. So it's something some people will want to be getting rid of. Some people will be getting charged to get rid of by whoever's doing their groundworks. So it's not actually too hard to come across. And you might have to sieve the stone out, and you might have to, if you get lots of turf in it, that's okay. Put the grass face down so the grass dies and put it at the bottom of your bed. It's not a problem. It's all good. Just be slightly mindful you don't get it from, unless you're in the middle of Inverness, it's not from an industrial site that might have been polluted. So farmers' fields and people's gardens is better. I've just seen someone maybe jumping ahead, but Helen wondered about sleepers. I'm a bit cautious about sleepers, Helen, because a lot of them are treated with, Jill, what is it?
I can't remember.
The black stuff
it's
that
a weed
leaches
preservative.
out.
Yeah.
Creosote. Yeah.
It's like a creosote. Yeah.
It's a creosote.
Something
I
like
sourced
that.
a load of free sleepers for my garden once, and then a hot sunny day came along, and the creosote was literally leaking out the end, and you don't want to be growing vegetables in that. So I have never used that for my vegetable gardens, but you can. I mean, I guess you could use it for defining paths and boundaries, but nothing I would suggest where you're growing food. They also seem to be quite expensive at the moment, sleepers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helen was saying as well about you like them higher up so you don't have to bend so much. There's actually some good designs that you can get online. There's these kind of like plant trug things which are raised up, and I think to be honest, they're designed with people in wheelchairs in mind, so the chair can actually sort of go underneath them and the person can work on above. But again, if you've got like bad backs and things, they're pretty much at waist height, some of those things. So have a sort of good Google. Yeah. Sorry, Sharon, what was that?
Tatty boxes. We came across tatty.
Oh, of course.
Tatty boxes.
Got 2 tatty boxes in my own garden.
We're a lot closer to the black aisle than we are, But if you can get tatty boxes from farmers that are just used, I think we spent sort of 20 quid. You can either cut them down and have 2 nice big high raised beds. Mm-hmm. Is it too late to mulch with seaweed? Well, I don't think so. What do we know about seaweed? Don't dig it in.
Don't dig it in. Yeah.
Don't dig it in. Leave it on the surface. It's got something like, go on, Jill, 60 different types of nutrients that we add into your soil.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of different nutrients that you can add as well. There's also a lot of discussion about whether you have to rinse it off first or not. Personally, we didn't rinse it this year because we had a very wet season up here, of course, in Caithness. It's Caithness. It's known as the flow country for good reason. So I wasn't particularly worried about rinsing off the salt from it. But yeah, there's a huge amount of nutrients available in seaweed. It's one of the wonderful things, and it's a natural resource. Just be a little bit careful the times to go get it. And again, you'll need to Google it because I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's obviously little things breeding in it at some points of the year, and you are not allowed to harvest growing seaweed. What you are allowed to harvest is anything that's been blown up onto the beaches after a storm, for example. So after gales and things, you can go and collect what's left, but don't harvest it. You need a license to harvest seaweed. And I think from memory, please don't quote, round about August, September time, you're not supposed to, because there could be little things in it that are using it as breeding space. So yeah, just it's worth a little bit of investigation. Some people might have to check with local councils as well whether it's okay. But it's brilliant stuff, and God, we used to use it all the time, particularly in the north of Scotland. It's well known. Some of the older crofts and things. So yeah, natural resource.
Good tip is like in nature, there's no bare soil. Nature spends all its time covering soil with leaves, with detritus, things like that. So in your garden, if you want to increase your soil productivity, which is what happens in nature, it's constantly building soil, mulch your beds. Don't leave bare soil in the winter because you'll lose water, you lose nutrients. It suffers from the frost and things like that, and the water. So straw, cardboard, seaweed, horse manure. What else, Jill? There's so much. Newspaper.
Just newspaper, yeah. Your own garden compost.
Old carpet, garden compost. There's so many free leaf mold. Make leaf mold. God, we wish, how we had like this, so many amazing volunteers that were collecting leaves for us in the autumn, and then we compost it down, and it's just the best of your soil. So
I had to build another bay this year, didn't I? We got so much this year. Leaf mold's brilliant stuff.
Absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, do a little bit of research, but I would say don't leave your beds uncovered with soil. And just, I say put seaweed on is fine now, but don't leave it more than a little bit because you want it to rot down before you start planting your veg in it, so your veggies don't burn. So yeah, add it now, but I wouldn't probably add it at the end of the month because you'll be putting vegetables in, hopefully. But,
calcified seaweed. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one actually. I would need to check calcified seaweed. Obviously, levels of calcium in your soil are good for certain plants, but things that use a lot of calcium. But you can also overdose a little bit on some nutrients as well, and that can have a poor effect on your plants. The best one I can think of right now, stumbling a bit here, is nitrogen. If you overdose on sort of nitrogen levels in your soils, then you end up with lots of really tall, leggy green growth in your plants, but you'll find that the resistance to pest and disease is quite poor, and also you won't get a lot of buds on them. They tend to concentrate on leaf growth rather than the development of, say, the root or buds if you're fruiting vegetables, for example, flowers. What am I talking about? Fruit, sorry. So just be a little bit careful. Calcified seaweed, I would imagine, is quite a strong concentrated thing. So there will be dosage rates on stuff like that as well. So I would just check first. I would just check your dosage rates first and check what you're growing. And if it needs something like a lot of calcium, then fair enough. If it doesn't, then I'd be a little bit more careful with that because you don't want to overdo it. Sorry, that seemed to take ages. That was an awful long-winded explanation there, wasn't it? More coffee needed, more coffee.
Can you line sleepers with plastic inside the raised bed to stop creosote leaching into soil? We had some old sleepers that we've already used them for 2 beds. Yeah, I'm sure, like Karen, And not all sleepers will leak creosote. It depends on when they were last soaked. What they tend to do is soak them and then use them and then it comes out. But yeah, I mean, just, you know your garden and your area. Be mindful of what you use to make your decisions. Do some research. Yeah, dig a pond, use the soil. I would definitely suggest incorporating a pond into every garden, however small. You know, even if it's just one of those ponds that you make out of your kitchen, you know, your kitchen sinky thing, you know, something small like that, because the amount of beneficial hoverflies, frogs, toads, insect life that they'll encourage into your garden. Or if you're like me, just surrounded by ditches.
Yeah, it really doesn't have to be complicated. I just have, you know how you get these big round plastic. Oh, am I breaking up?
No, you're better.
You just get these big round plastic water trees, you know, plant trees. They go underneath your pots and things, and it's just for catching any excess water. And all I did was put in 2 or 3 of those around the garden, and the water's only an inch deep, maybe an inch and a half deep maximum. But my God, the number of little frogs that appeared over the summer was incredible. You know, there was about 5 or 6 little frogs split between the 3 little watering dishes, and of course the birds come in and drink from those as well. So it doesn't have to be a big complicated pond design. Even just putting something like a shallow tray is enough, as long as things like, you know, if you make it too deep, make sure that hedgehogs and things can get out of it again. But it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be quite straightforward.
We've just got 5 minutes left, or 6 minutes left. I was thinking, Jill, I might pop everyone in breakout rooms again.
Ooh.
Just for like a
Showing
couple of
off now.
minutes. I know. It worked last week. And again, just introduce yourself. I'm going to put you in groups of 3 or 4. Spend just 30 seconds introducing yourself, and then maybe have a little brainstorm, because last week is our last session. So when we come back, I'd really like people to pop into the chat anything that they think they'd really love us to cover, which, guys, we're not going to have a lot of time next week because we're talking about seeds as well. But just think if anything comes up, you think, oh, I really wish that we could just spend a couple of minutes talking about next week. Is that okay with everybody? Again, if you don't get yourself into a breakout room, don't worry. Just stay with me and Jill. And you're going to get 5 minutes, so be succinct. Follow your noses. Yes, pallets for free, Susan, absolutely. Pallets. Someone else was talking about pallets. I'm sorry I missed that, but yeah, pallets are amazing.
Just going to answer Helen. Oh.
Jill, I'm going to go join a room, but is that okay?
I'm just answering Helen here.
Yeah, cool. And then we'll bring it back after 5 minutes and then just round up and head off. Is that all right? Cool. See you later, alligator.
See you in a bit. We all come. I was sitting all on my own there like Billy No Mates. Terrified to touch my laptop in case I lost connection.
Oh, dear. I'm normally terrified to touch it in case I muck something up because it's not my laptop.
It's funny now, having been a gardener, like working with Thurso Grows. I've never been a great one for computers, and yet now it's like I seem to be using the laptop more and more because of
Yeah.
COVID, and I actually just can't wait to get back to doing face-to-face courses with people.
Oh, I know.
Being a bit alien.
Yeah. When we were in our rented property, it was right in front of the learning centre at Lurg, and just before we moved, I'd been online and earmarked all the classes that I wanted to do, you know, and I was absolutely gutted when the lockdown happened.
Yeah.
We'd moved, been here about 2 weeks, and then it was lockdown, and so obviously no classes and nothing going on. So yeah, I was pretty gutted about that because there were several that I did want to do, but anyway, hopefully one day in the future.
Yeah, I know, it'd be nice to get back. I'm not used to teaching over a screen like this. I stood up in front of lecture theatres for years, and I found it quite bizarre talking to people on a screen instead. And it's not easy when you do the PowerPoint presentations. You can't see all of your faces anymore. You lose that.
Yeah.
So I can't see people's reactions to things that I'm saying. I can't make eye contact with people and gauge how they feel about a subject or see the emotions go through their faces. I find it quite difficult to connect sometimes on the Zoom thing because I can't see you. You know, so,
and you can't judge then either.
Yeah. And I think, you can
something or whether to cut something a bit short or because you can't see how people are responding to it. Yeah. No, it's
all about setting a tone for people as well, and whether they're understanding seeing people's faces when you've lost them, and that's really difficult just now. So God, I can't wait to get back to just doing things normally.
That's what we used to call normal.
I think I'll hug all of my students when we're allowed. Come back.
I know, it's mental. Who would have believed that we'd have been through a year like we've been through?
Oh, no. I know. It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. But hey ho, onwards and upwards. We look forward to the normal times.
We do. We do indeed. I'm seeing some of the questions coming up there, and I've not got my glasses on. Hold on.
I put a note up, Jill, that we're at the end, so we won't mind if people zip off, and we'll probably just stick around for another 5 minutes. Is that okay? And just we can maybe answer a few, but or we can we'll capture the ones that are coming up and try and we'll try our very best to sort of touch on or signpost people next week. I will just say, Rebecca, there's a Facebook group that you've got for anyone that's on here that wants to jump on and start sharing pictures of your gardens, talking to each other, sharing ideas. There's such a huge amount of knowledge in this room without me and Jill. So be each other's support as well. Could you pop that in the chat for us, Rebecca?
Definitely can. I'll share that. And I'm going to be sending out some of the links that I referenced in the chat throughout the day, just if anybody wants to take part in the composting or the polytunnel workshop that we've got with you guys coming up and all the rest.
Yeah. I think we're doing the polytunnel session.
And we've got Emma Armstrong doing the composting workshop.
Amazing.
Super. There's a few questions here.
No, Helen, there's a leg group.
Yes,
Facebook leg group.
I know that one. Yeah.
Cool.
I think answering a question there from Susan, do you think we'll still do online classes? I think it's a good idea to keep going with them. There's people saying, big advantage for more people coming from different parts of the country. Yeah, Alison, absolutely. I think there'll still be a place for it. Yeah. I don't see why there couldn't be, because it does bring you access to other places.
And when Rebecca sends that email out next week, just hit reply and tell her how much you've enjoyed yourself, and then she can send that to her boss, and her boss will send her some money to.
Fiona was asking about ginger. I have ginger growing. I've had last 2 years successful crop of ginger. I've never got mine to flower, but if you're meaning to harvest ginger to use it in cooking, then I've had 2 really good successes with ginger.
Right.
Did I start it off from a shop? The first bit I bought in, yes. So the first bit I did try it from a shop and it didn't work. And I got one from a plant supplier and put it in and it went. And the second bit I've got has been one bud from that first piece that I bought. So yeah. But you can just let it start to go to shoot, and once you see the wee green bud starting to shoot, then put it into your compost. It can be quite funny over its watering conditions, so don't overwater it. It prefers a drier type of compost, and it also prefers, I grow mine in a window ledge pot, one of these long thin pots, because ginger likes to move sideways to grow. So that's one of the things that I've discovered, but be careful. I had to tell Mr. Bird off and tell him to stop watering it, because actually you'll make them rot if you give them too much water. So yeah. What else have we got there?
A question about next week we will share some seed companies and advice around seeds. There's a whole session on seeds and seed plant sourcing, so we'll definitely be giving you some pointers. Stagnant water in ponds. I've made a few ponds and I just seem to find, like, I've just done natural ponds and they sort of, I guess if you've got ducks going in them, I know that's a problem. Don't let your ducks in your pond. But if you've got a good pond, like biology, and I don't know much about this subject, sort of plants, and you propagate it properly, I've never had a problem with ponds. And what I tend to find is my ponds go down in the sun when I put them into, and you know, do all sorts of things. But mine have always been super simple. But YouTube is something that's brilliant for stuff like that. Get on YouTube and Google natural pond, handmade pond, recycled pond, permaculture pond, wildlife pond. Get yourself a bottle of wine and watch it, and then you'll be an expert.
Origin. Smaller bodies of water tend to just kind of regulate themselves. When you that you might start to need things like air pumps and that, but if the surface water can be broken and there's oxygen getting in, then it should be absolutely fine. But it's when they get deeper, you can start putting things like oat straw into them, which helps to keep algae down and stuff like that. There's a chemical reaction, I can't remember what it is now, but yeah, that's when you need to sort of start adding in some sort of oxygenator, whether that be a pump or whether that be plants. Getting into the plants is a bit more complicated. Don't ask me, because I'm only just learning about them just now. But some of them are thugs as well. Some of the plants that you would put into ponds are basically just thugs. So you have to be very careful about what you put in. It's probably easier just to put in a pump if you have to do that, buy a wee solar pump. But generally speaking, the smaller volumes of water, they'll manage themselves, because as Sharon says, they're open to the air anyway. So oxygen can enter in and out of the water. You've got rain coming in, which will top them up again. And they do just tend to self-regulate themselves a bit. And the biodiversity, the biology that's in there will keep them good. So yeah, most of the time they're absolutely fine. You don't need to do any of that. Depends on how complicated you want to get with your build.
Maybe just 2 more minutes, Jill, then we'll say cheerio. Cheerio. Apps that are useful. I don't know, actually. Jill was talking about that sun tracker app, but I don't really use my phone. Instagram. I like Instagram because I can see other people's gardens, because I watch what other people are doing and I'm quite visual. Have you got any ideas, Jill?
Sorry, I missed that question. What was it for? For apps?
Useful apps.
I'm not so sure about apps. Really, just like YouTube. I found some of the stuff on YouTube invaluable. I mean, I've got my wee sun tracker app. I don't use it an awful lot now. I used it more when I was sort of thinking about my design. as I said to Sharon before, my design was harder to deal with because somebody had already kind of done it when I moved in here, and it would have cost a lot of money to change it all around. But yeah, YouTube, I think, has been my best friend for gardening advice. Instagram, brilliant. Following the likes of Hugh Richards and that on Instagram. He's just done a really interesting one on crop rotation and whether it's actually needed at all. So he's really throwing it into the mix about crop rotation. It might not be needed at all. So yeah,
Magical.
I know, God.
So Hugh Richards, and I can see people writing things down. Check out Charles Dowding. If I put his name into the thing, maybe when Charles Dowding. I'll put these in the chat, and hopefully Rebecca will catch them. But they're both great on YouTube, and I love a bit of Charles. He's absolutely fantastic.
Now, I meant to say, because somebody said they had crofts.
I'm going to stop recording because we're over session.
Right, okay. Very quickly.